Well, good afternoon. Appreciate you joining us here again today on the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. I'm Jerry Isenhour, and who are you today?
I'll go for Sherryl Isenhour
There,
today.
there you go. So anyway, we got something really neat to share with you today, something that can separate you from other people in your community. And who's your community? Your community is the people that buy from you or may buy from you. So we're going to kind of give you a little bit of secret sauce today. So get out a notepad and make some notes as we go through this. Because I'm telling you, this is going to be a super process that we're going to share with you. Now, let me take you why I'm doing this today. I'm doing this because earlier this week, I listened to two different people that I respect a lot, and they both did lives about this. Happy weekend to you too, Brian. Good to see you on here, brother. And the two people that I heard speak this week, one of them was a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Gittimer. And Jeffrey was a person that I was actually certified by some years ago as a sales coach, and he still works as a mentor and a supporter and a person I go to and a coach. The other person was a lady by the name of Michelle Prince. And Michelle Prince is a very special person to both of us, and especially to Cheryl here. And we're going to talk to you today about something that both of them stressed on their live cast earlier this week. And I'm telling you, it's a secret sauce to really separate yourself. So, Cheryl, why don't you share why Michelle Prince is such a special person to you?
Michelle, other than just becoming a good friend, led me toward in the direction of writing my books. I already had the thoughts in mind, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, didn't know exactly where to start. And I came about her after being in the Ziegler Corp. So with that, she actually helped me get my first book off the press, and I'm also in two composite books that she's done. So super nice lady.
Yeah, so we're going to take you through that today because as Michelle Prince shares in her live stream this week, we all have a story. And Cheryl, you had stories and I've had stories. So what we were able to do was we've been able to condense our thoughts into words, and we have published between us 13 books at this point. That's right, 13 books. I've done 7. Cheryl's done 6, and actually, we have other books that are in process right now. And why do we write books? We don't write books to get rich because, that would be really great to be one of those authors that gets really large residual checks every month. But Cheryl, I would say we have given away more books by far than we've sold. Would you agree with that?
We have, and I know some people wouldn't understand, but to me, that's richer than money.
That's correct. And see, we're going to also talk today about how a book can be your business card, how it can be your business card in business. You see, this is the whole thing. People throw away your business card, but people keep a book. So, like I said, we have both wrote books that we've collaborated with other people on. In fact, the first book that she and I both published were what we would call collaborative books. So, Cheryl, why don't you show people the first collaborative book that you wrote on? I'm going to step away while Cheryl's talking to you and let her tell you about this collaborative book that she wrote. And this was actually driven by Michelle Prince. Am I correct?
It was.
So tell the folks about what you saw there and what you did in the collaborative book that you did.
Okay, Michelle picked us out, and well, actually, we talked to her, and we all did it. This is a collaborate book. This is not the best venue to show it. It's the way it is, but you'll see it a little bit later. I've actually done 2. The first one, we all got together. We had to write a story. Then Michelle took them, she published them all together, and then it was sent out, and we were all listed as, quote, authors at that point. And, it's really cool when you can say you're an author, but this was a great book, but there's nothing like authoring your own. But this was super because some of these people were people that I was in Ziegler, and they are Ziegler coaches also. And we've become we've become great friends. We're good mentors to each other. And we're always, if somebody throws up, I'm thinking about a new book, everybody kicks in.
Right. So same situation with me. I had a story in me, and I met a fellow coach. He was a John Maxwell coach. His name was Tim Davis. And Tim Davis was putting together a project with a collaborative book, which was my first publication, which, if you can see it here, if you could only share one piece of advice, what would it be? Here's what we said. And this was a group of authors that we all got together. We all submitted one chapter in this book. But what did this book teach me? It told me about the self-publishing process and how you publish your own works. How do you get them on Amazon? How do you do cover design? How do you do the editing? How do you do the layout and everything that's involved? And at this point, Cheryl, putting together a book's really pretty simple for me and you, isn't it?
It really is, but I don't want to scare anybody away from using somebody like Michelle either. It's the word's much easier to take this and hand it to Michelle, and Michelle make it pretty and make it go and make it go. But no, a self-publish is extremely easy.
Right. So from that point of doing a collaborative book, I had been told for years, Jerry, you've got a story. And my story was about things that had happened in my life back in the last recession and how my life had completely turned around. And from that point, I worked for months on my next work, which was my own book with no one else being involved in it except for the editor and the cover designer. But as far as the writing, it was all me. And that book, when I took it to print, was Chaos to Reinvention, which is a story about what I went through in the last recession. And it tells you my story. And see, that's the thing. We've all got this story in us. And if we can share it with other people, how it can help other people. Recently, I shared that I had had a heart attack in January. And believe it or not, a man called me this morning. I haven't told you this yet. And he thanked me. He said, after you shared your story, I recently didn't feel good and I was going to let it pass. But I remember what you said about having a heart attack and calling 911 and how you got to the hospital and how you had actually had a widowmaker, which if I'd have just wrote it out. And see, that's what you can do whenever you tell your story. Your story can influence other people. And the thing is, this is your story. So Cheryl, what was the next book that you published from that point? And this is, guys, I want you to pay really close attention as she shares this with you. Go ahead.
My next one, I did a business card book. They're small and it doesn't show up real well, but
Put it right in front of your shirt.
It fits. There we go. It fits in a pocket. And I have these out there. I'm having people that I gave them to right after I wrote that, and they came up, they're saying now, you don't know how many times I've picked that book up. Now, the second half of the book, because it's my business card book, the second half of the book is my biography. The first half of the book is a story about my dad when he was in the hospital after his aneurysm surgery. And it was actually the first thing I thought about writing. And actually, that's how I got in this book of Michelle's. Michelle said, let me put that in this book. So we did. My first book then had the story of my dad. And that's what it's all about. I mean, we spent 15 weeks in ICU. So it's amazing how much you can learn about a person. And if you don't write it down, it's amazing how much you can forget.
That's it. And when I look at this isn't a very long book, is it, Cheryl? When I look at this, the writing that you've got here, actually is only 37 pages. Okay. And like she said, this book can fit into someone's pocket. I think my pocket's just a little bit too small for it, but it can fit in a pocketbook. It can fit in in your back pocket. It's a really short book, but you gave a story. What's the story about again?
It's about Dad having, my father had 2 aneurysms, and one on one side of his head and one on the other. And for 15 weeks, we were in ICU after. This tells about from the when he called and told me he had a headache till I brought him home, and actually until the day passed. But it told of the time that I got to know a man that at those 15 weeks had no idea that I was his daughter. I was the lady that was taking care of him. In fact, after the 15 weeks in ICU, we spent 7 more in the regular rooms, still not knowing me. And the day before we came home, he looked at me and called me by name. And I said, yeah, that's me. He said, no, you're my daughter. So it was 20 plus weeks before my dad knew who I was, but I learned so much about him. And I just wanted to share what it's like to be there when you really, it sounds terrible, you really wouldn't have to be because he had no idea. But for me, that was one solid year I wouldn't trade for anything.
Right. So as we talked earlier, I published my own book, and then it's like, okay, I can do this. So from that point, I then published 2 more collaborative books. One is called Blue Collar Marketing. And I could, and I asked 2 really good networking connections of mine that actually work on websites and work with a lot of the same clients. Their names were Taylor Hill and Carter Harkins. So what we did is we worked on this collaborative book here, which is called Blue Collar Marketing. And this is a really great book that tells people how to market a blue collar service business. From that point, I worked with 2 more subject matter experts. Their name were Patty Lawrence and Ed Crow. And Patty is an expert in the world of finance and a CFO that works independently with small businesses. Ed Crow is a human relations expert. So what we put together was called the Small Business Owner's Manual, Build Your Dream Business. So that was my next entry into the world of publishing books. What about you, Cheryl? What did you write about next?
I moved on to your parents at that time. Actually, I started taking care of my mom when I was 12. And then, as I did in the little book, I took care of my dad till he passed. And my mom actually passed the week that I met you. So you never got to meet either one of my parents. But I got to meet yours up nice, close, and personal. Over the next 18 years, we had his parents, mother, father, stepmother, stepfather, and one of them lived with us for 18 years.
Yeah.
And so my next book was a question that I asked a lot of people when they saw them. I mean, I became an empty nester at 62. So I wrote a book that was called Will You Be There? Because are you going to be there when your parents are ailing? Are you going to be there when you have to take care of them? Taking care of parents was harder than taking care of children, I think. And then I moved on from there to the caretaker, because that's the very first person that you need to take care of, yourself, or the person that's taking care of your parents. And then the next one also it's not medical, it's just things that you need to do, how to avoid stress and depression. I never got to the point of depression, and don't think I ever really got stressed. But after I had taken care of parents for all those years, we had people come in and asking us how it was and how did you do it and can you help me do it? And I noticed they were getting really, really stressed out. And the thing about it, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. It's kind of like in the airplane, put your mask on first.
Yeah. And one of the things about these books that she's written is we've had people that have went through this with their parents and faced their parents' demise, passing away. And many of them have contacted us for how much these books meant to them. to help them in these challenging times. Because if you ever go through, which we've done, when you go through that your parents, you are looking after your parents, you become the parent. It's a very challenging time. None of us are really prepared for this. There was nothing in life to ever prepare us for what we were going through of looking after parents. So this is some of Cheryl's works of what she's done.
We also found out it was really hard to put them in timeout.
Correct. You can't punish them real good there. So from that point, I kept going with some other books that I wrote. And one of these books was how to move a new recruit to a skilled technician, because that's what I do in training. Is I take a lot of new trainees and we bring them into the company and we try to help them become members of the team where they're productive, where they are contributing to the team and doing all the things that need to be done from there. Then my next book that I wrote, again, these are not really thick books. You can read these books in just in a little bit of time. It's not the number of pages. A lot of times people may say, well, a book needs to have 25,000 words or 50,000 words or those kind of things. And I think of Dr. John Maxwell when he wrote the book, The Greatest Story Ever Told, which has only one page in it, and where it is. And Dr. Maxwell is encouraging people with this book that they write their own story, because that is the greatest story that you'll ever tell. Is your story, and it's inside of your head. Now, like I say, please stay with us as we go through this, because we're going to share where this is going to be so very big for you in business if you go forward. So it's, then I wrote one called Standardizing Standard Operating Procedures. You see, back in the 1990s, I read a book called The E-Myth, and I was able to get to know Michael Gerber, who authored The E-Myth. And it was all about SOPs. And I bought in the SOPs and standard operating procedures and call scripting, and have taught these for a number of years. So one day I decided, it's time that I got my thoughts down in writing. So I sat down and wrote this book, and it didn't take long at all. I just started going at it, writing it, getting it through editing, those kind of things. And in fact, that's one of the projects I've got going on, which is the second publication of this, of turning this into a workbook, which my editor has already finished the first draft, and we're planning on taking that to the publication before long, to help people in the systems of standard operating procedures. And then earlier this year, I got into my head it was time to go with another book to help people in growing their new employees going forward. Okay, so from that point, earlier this year, I published another book. This was my 7th book, called Step Up to Success. And again, this is all about taking people through the hiring mechanism, taking them through the assessment process, taking them through the interview process. Then how do we onboard? How do we train? Now, when I go into books like this, a lot of times I'm going to use outside subject matter experts. Like when I wrote this book, Cheryl was a person that she actually did and gave me thoughts on it. Brandy Biswell was another person. My editor, Sarah Shippey, she's a great lady, does a great job. I got a lady out in San Diego, California by the name of Terry Pocock. So a lot of times when writing a book, we'll send them out to a focus group of people that will go there. One of the people that actually reviewed this book for me and told me there was a gentleman by the name of Scott McCain. Scott McCain has authored books, and Larry Winget was another person that authored it and gave me some suggestions there. But if you go in, Scott even agreed to write the preface for me in this, which was very impressive to see. Scott McCain, he's the founder of Distinction Institute. He's Professional Speakers Hall of Fame, Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame. He's wrote many distinctive books. One of them's Iconic. Another one is Create Distinction and What Customers Really Want. And when you send it to a focus group like that, and they give you the great ideas and look at it and talk about, does it work? Okay. So it's like Richard that just come on, and he's saying here, this is Richard Tattershaw. He's in Skiatook, Oklahoma, and he's a person that we work with. And like I said, he's telling you right there, SOPs are a game changer with his business. And it has definitely been a game changer for him. So this is all about the ways that you can do it. Now, if you've listened to this point, hopefully you're getting the idea and you can understand that writing a book is not that hard to do. You've just got to be willing to sit down and put your thoughts into words. But as I said, this is something that I have been encouraging my client base, my coaching client base, since 2017 to write their own book. I actually had a summit here in Concord, North Carolina, and we had about 70 people came in and attended this summit. So out of this, at that time, that was one of the ideas that I suggested. And what we had here is we've had one gentleman that has actually went through the publication process at this time. And I hope he's listening to this. His name is Steve Sobsack. So Steve is in the chimney, the venting, and the hearth industry. He's located in Milford, Connecticut. So Steve has actually written a book here, and this book is about 156 pages, and it's all about basics of chimneys, which are his business. Now, where does this benefit him? Because no one else in his market area and his community has actually written a book that's understandable by consumers where he can give this. And that's what's going to happen if you pursue a book and you write a book about your story, about what you know. Because once you become a published author, people are going to look at you and think of you completely different. Because the written words that you put down, once you become published, all of a sudden raises your expertise. It makes you a subject matter expert. And I've got other people that are in the process of writing these books. What you got to do is remember, it just takes some time of sitting there, and you got to dedicate that time to it. But if you're interested in building your authority, and that's what it builds in your marketplace, your community, and your community is the people that buy from you or the people that may buy from you. I know I've got one guy watching on here. His name is Brian Kelm. And Brian, I've never met Brian face to face. We're in some of the same coaching groups, but at the same time, Brian has put 11 books on paper, but he's never published one. So to be honest with you, earlier about 2 weeks ago, I pushed Brian. I said, Brian, it's time to make it happen, brother. And other people do it too. And this is what you can do. If you can want to separate yourself and you're thinking to yourself, how do I do this? Well, there's sources that can help you do this. I mentioned earlier, Jeffrey Gitomer. Jeffrey Gitomer has published many books, and Jeffrey holds writers' weekends down in South Carolina at his beach condo. So that's one of the sources you can go to, is for Jeffrey to help you, guide you through the process. But he's only one of the people. Let's tell them about Michelle and her Bookbound series.
Before I do that, I want to say something about Zig Ziglar. People asked him how did he write so many books? And he told them, I've never written a book. He said, I sit down every day and write a page or two. And he said, then all of a sudden you look at it and I've got a book. And that's one of the stories that Michelle tells also. Michelle has Bookbound. They're doing it. I did Bookbound by the Sea. And so we went down to the beach and we had I think we had about 50 in there. Great group. We learned a lot. Right now, bless her heart, she's having to do them all virtually. But one day we'll be going back to the sea, because I'm kind of like Michelle. There's nothing like writing at the sea. But go to her Bookbound if you want to get over that phobia, because it's really easy. But, and I'm going to tell you something you don't know. Talked to Michelle the other day. Told her, remember the first mind map that I did when I was at Bookbound?
Yes.
I told her the other day I was getting ready to start back on the book. I have never finished my first book. And because you don't have to finish the first one to do the second one. I knew that I needed something else to complete the book. The book was called, or will be, The Juggler of People. That's what I did when I dealt with Jerry's family. You made sure you juggled the appointments, you juggled the meals. That's all you did all day long was juggle people. And I told Michelle when I got to a certain point, I told her one day, I said, I cannot finish this book. I said, I've got one more chapter and I don't know what it is.
Right.
You know what it was?
Let's slide over to the right a little bit. Let's show them our library.
You know what it was?
What?
It was you.
It was me.
That's my last chapter.
Okay.
You had your heart attack.
So from there, but yes, this is if we can get one message out to you today, just look behind us. There's 13 books right there. And you've heard us both say there's more books in our minds, in our work. In fact, I just sent a note around for a collaborative effort between the members of my team of putting something together less than an hour ago. When I look at it, I'm hoping Brandy, that's a member of our team, is watching this because Brandy has stories that she needs to get out, right?
She does.
And it is. So, here's the whole thing. If you're interested in connecting with Michelle, and hopefully I sent Michelle a note today. I'd hope to have her on this today, and she had a commitment, but I'm going to bring Michelle on for long. Not just from books, but let me tell you something. When you can hear Michelle Prince speak, you will think you are listening to Zig Ziglar reincarnated. And that's because she spent so much time with Zig, right?
She started as an early teen.
Yeah. So the whole thing is, if you want help in this, if you see this as somewhere you want to go, reach out to us here at info@cvsuccessgroup.com. We'll be more than happy to help you get started in this process. If you need some help, let us know. We're pretty good pushers there, aren't we?
Pretty
So
good.
we'll help push you where you want to go. Brian, my friend who's on here, he can tell you, we can push when it needs to be pushed. But I know that inside of you, you have a story. I know that if you can put your story down into words, if you can build this fantastic business card for you, you're going to be truly shocked at what you can turn out. And just think about this. Think about the process. This is what I tell people. Imagine that you're quoting a new job. You're quoting it for a customer. And as part of that proposal process, you hand them the book that you wrote, or your crews give them the book that you wrote it. Okay? What's going to happen here is you're going to raise yourself above anyone else that's going to be quoting on that job. You have given that customer a business card of the highest order, a business card that they're not going to throw away. When you look at it, just look how this book that Mr. Sobsack wrote, how it can be such a sales tool to show others. In fact, one of the people that works with us here is a gentleman by the name of Donovan Blanks. And when Donovan started working with our customers, with our clients, that was one of the things that I told him. You cannot start until you have your first book out. And that first book he wrote, it was a little business card book, just like what Cheryl wrote here, wasn't in-depth. But let me tell you something. Once you see that author's copy, once you get it, Cheryl, how did you feel when you held the first author's copy? That's what you get when you're going through the process. You're going to get an author's copy, and that author's copy is going to be sent to you. How did it feel when you opened up that envelope and you had your first?
I was so proud. I was proud because of the story it was about, and it gave you an incentive. You want to go sit down and write the second book. But as you see, and Jerry will back this. Jerry, if you'll look across the top at his books, they're basically all business except the one. All mine are about people. It doesn't have to be all about business. It doesn't have to be all about personal. pick one, just pick a subject. You all have a story. And if there's just one line in this book that helps one person, I've done my dues.
Yeah.
And we all think we've got to write the book that feeds everybody, and you don't. Write what's in your heart, write what's in your mind. As you see, Jerry's mind is totally business, and that's what he enjoys writing about. I'm working with him on some business things also, but for me, it's the heart, it's the commitment, it's in my mind, and that's what I want people to see. Just look inside your mind, start mind mapping, start writing notes. It doesn't take that long to make a page of notes into a book.
Think of how your life experiences, what you've been through in your life. How could it help someone else? Think about this way. What's your legacy? What's going to survive beyond you? When you look at this, how proud are your children? Is your spouse going to be when you publish that first book?
Hey, I just hope my children read these when they get ready to take care of me.
Yeah, we hope they take your advice. That's right. So, but it is a way, because like Michelle shares in her webinars, everybody has a story, and everybody has a story that can help other people. We talked earlier about my heart attack. And if you look, my book here is Chaos to Reinvention. That was the first book, and that was my story from 10 years ago. But right now, I've gone through the chaos and the reinvention of a heart attack. And actually, I'm doing a presentation in June about what's the chaos of the heart attack and how do you reinvent yourself from this. And see, that's the thing here. Can your story help someone else? Can your story be a game changer? Can your story be a life changer? Can your story help someone at a time that they really, really need it? So we wanted to spend this time with you today. Every week, Cheryl and I talk. It's like, well, what do we want to talk about this week? And I told her, I said, let's talk about our stories. Let's talk about how we put stories down, and let's encourage the people that give us the courtesy of listening to us during our podcast broadcasts like this. Let's give them why we write their story. Because you know what would really make me happy?
What's that?
To hear someone say, hey, Jerry, my book just went up on Amazon today. And I did this because I heard you and Cheryl. And see, that's the way we do business. That's what we do here at CVC Success Group. We work to change lives. We work to help people get the life and the business they want. We never ever stress people to go to a business that doesn't fit them. And just like Brian said, can your story help someone? Can what you write and the words you put down, can they make a difference in the life of another? And can it make a difference in your life? You might just be surprised what it can do for you and for and how you can help another person.
And this is a little segue off what you said. It doesn't take but a couple words to make somebody feel good. It may not take but a couple words to take them to the next level or to get them through the next problem. But when you're gone, so are those words. But if those words are written down, they're there forever. I'm hoping that these books help people long after I'm gone, because life really doesn't change. Parents are still parents. You still got to take care of them. Businesses are still business. Again, a few words right now can make somebody feel good, but what about books of words that can make them people over and over feel good?
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you'd like to get Cheryl Mind books, one thing you can do when you see us, we'd love to give you one. We usually have books with us about everywhere we go. We'd love to give you a copy of our books. It's not, in our process, it's not about selling books. It's about changing lives. It's about helping others. But if you're sitting there and you'd really like to get one of the books, we're both published. You can access any of ours on Amazon. The best way to find our books is to type either of our names into Amazon search bar. If you type in Sherryl Isenhour, and that is with an S, if you type in Sherryl Isenhour, can they get all your books off Amazon?
The Collaborate books they're on Michelle's site. We run the back side there.
Okay, so they're going to go through Michelle's publishing company as far as that's concerned, as far as those.
Yeah.
On mine,
But I can send them to them. If anybody wants one, just get in touch with me. I can get you one.
there you
No
go.
problem.
So Cheryl can guide you that way. Again, reach out to us at info@cvsuccessgroup.com. Now, all my books, they're all published on Amazon. Actually, I've got one that's in the Audible format if you don't like to read. I've got them in the e-version, the Kindle versions, and I've got them in the printed versions. So, but again, if you see me somewhere, I usually have books in my briefcase. I'd love to give you one. I'm not going to hand you a book and say, hey, give me $9.95 plus tax or whatever. It's not what it's all about. I mean, if I go up the back of my car right now, I have all my books in the back of the car. So often I meet someone and we're talking and I'll give them a book, because this is what happens whenever you hand someone that work that you have published. You're going to be amazed at the look of that person's face when they say, you've written a book? Yeah, I've written several. So think about it. Think about how it can change your business. Think about how it can change your life. Think about how it can take other people and yourself to a much higher level. So Cheryl, is there anything you want to add in before we end this week's episode?
Just take the time to put your thoughts down on paper. And once you get those thoughts down, turn them into a book, because if it was a really good thought, somebody else may can use it today.
Yeah. But let's add this. Cheryl just told you something, which is one way to write a book, which is to get your thoughts down on paper. But I'm going to share with you a completely different way to write a book. And that's way is where you actually talk the book, where you actually record your words. Instead of sitting down and try to write it out, you actually speak it into a recording. And from that point, you get a transcriptionist that can actually transcribe your words
And
down
can
on
understand
paper.
Southern lingo.
Yeah, they've got to understand Southern lingo. You're going to have to do heavy editing because, like I said, the words that come down from the transcription, they're going to have to be edited very, very heavily in order to make sure it comes out right. So there's different ways you can write this book of getting it out. But like I said, if you need some assistance in doing this, hey, we'd be glad to help you through the process. Reach out to us again. We give you our email address before, but here it is again, info@cvcsuccessgroup.com. And Brian, we really appreciate you very much. So hopefully this is helping you. I know that hopefully I've activated you from our conversations into action. Some people may call it a little bit of kick up the butt or whatever, but hey, it was what you knew, and you're going to make it happen because you have a world to conquer there in the industry that you serve. You just got to get self-confidence to get it down. And Brian, I think you have it at this point. I'm really proud of you, and I'm looking forward to when I see this first book is published. Anything else?
No, everybody just get on the bandwagon, write a book, show us what you have inside.
Right. So with that, we're going to end this week's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. Whether you're in the chimney and fireplace business or no matter what business you're in, hopefully this message will help you today and give you some ideas on how to get your story out, how to take your story and use it as a way to boost your business to higher levels. Can it be done? You better believe it. It's just going to take a decision to make it happen. And sometimes it may take you stepping out of that comfort zone. It may take that. But earlier today, I'm going to end this with a little story. And earlier today, I was actually moving some stuff around in my office. recently relocated my office, and I'm able to bring my library, my artifacts, everything I've got, I put into one location, which has been almost 10 years where I didn't have stuff in storage. And as I did this, there was a basket there. And the basket had something in it that's very unique that I collected back in the 1990s because I went to Germany on a trip and went to the ESFO conference, but then spent some time in Berlin. Now, this was when the wall in Berlin had recently come down before that. So what was in this basket were some pieces of the Berlin Wall that I collected near Checkpoint Charlie, which was the crossover from East to West Berlin. That's where you went through. That was a military checkpoint to go through. But as I was thinking about this, the thought hit me. These chunks of concrete, they are a symbol of freedom. Because here's the thing. In many countries, what we're telling you to do, you wouldn't be allowed to do because you don't have the freedom to speak and get those words out. But here you have this freedom. You can tell your story, you can get it out, you can speak your point of view, and you can share it with others where it will make a change in their lives. Because when you start making changes in the lives of others, you're going to be very shocked how it's going to make a change in your life. Okay, so we appreciate you joining us today. I hope this time's been very helpful to you. I hope it's given you some ideas, some thought processes, some ways to proceed on and make things happen in your world. And again, don't let your comfort zone trap you in. Come out of that comfort zone. Get your story down. Share your stories with others. Be a game changer and be a life changer. You have the capabilities of doing that. And with that, thanks for joining us. It's been an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure. My name's Jerry Isenhour, and who are you?
Sherryl Isenhour.
And this is Sherryl Isenhour. And again, we really appreciate you tuning us in today. And we will see you next time on another episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network.